A hungry boy, a hard land, and a name that still divides a nation. From Avenel to Glenrowan, this is Ned Kelly's Rise and Fall told in clear English, so you can learn as you listen. Chapter 1. The Boy from Avenel. July 1865. In Avenel, a small town north of Melbourne, lived Ned Kelly with his parents, John and Ellen Kelly. Ned was 10 years old, the oldest of 7 children. He had 2 brothers, Jim and Dan, and 4 sisters, Anne, Maggie, Kate, and Grace. One evening, Ellen called out, "Where's your father, boy? Is he on the road? Can you see him?" Ned looked out through the door. "No, Ma," he said. "I can't see him." Later that night, John Kelly came home quietly. "Ellen," he said, "come with me. I need your help. There's a dead cow by the trees on the hill. We must cut it up and bring it home." "Oh, John, is it one of our cows?" asked Ellen. "How did it die?" "It's one of Morgan's cows. I killed it," said John. "We must hurry before he comes looking for it." "Oh, you fool!" cried Ellen. In the small 2-room house, Ned and his brothers and sisters could hear every word. He felt glad about the dead cow. They did not often have meat, and the children were always hungry. But the dead cow brought trouble. 3 days later, a policeman came. "John Kelly, you killed Morgan's cow, and I'm taking you to prison." That day, Ned had to leave school. He was now the man of the family. He helped his mother and worked hard on their small farm. Life was not easy for the Kellys. John Kelly and Ellen Quinn came from Ireland. They met in Melbourne and moved north to find land for farming. Many Irish people did the same, but some people got much more land than others. It was a rough life with plenty of drinking, fighting, and stealing, horses or cows, alive or dead. John Kelly stayed in prison for 6 months. It made him weak, and when he came out, he began to drink. A year and a half later, he died. "What are we going to do now, Ma?" Ned asked. Ellen thought for a moment. She was tall, strong, and brave, a fighter all her life. She later had 12 children and lived to be 93. "We must leave here," she said. "We'll go to the northeast, near my family." The Kellys moved to a new home at 11 Creek, near Greta. They had a few animals and a small garden. Ned worked hard to earn money. He could cut trees, care for horses and cows, and help on farms. But trouble was never far away. The police disliked the wild Kelly boys and their friends. In 1870, when Ned was 15, he hit a man in a fight, and the police sent him to prison for 6 months. The next year, something worse happened. Ned was riding a brown horse in Greta when Policeman Hall stopped him. "Ned Kelly, get off that horse and come with me. You stole it, and I'm taking you to prison." "That's not true," said Ned. Then a hard fight began. Hall had a gun, but Ned was stronger. In the end, Hall called for help, and 5 men came to catch Ned. The next day they took Ned to Wangaratta to face the judge. "It's not my horse," said Ned. "It belongs to a man named Wild Wright. He was at my mother's house when his horse ran away. I lent him one of mine. Later he told me, 'When you find the brown horse, keep her for me.' So I did." "Ned Kelly stole that horse," said Policeman Hall. "It belongs to a man from Mansfield, and someone stole it on the 6th of March. "Well," said Ned, "I was in Beechworth prison until the 29th of March. How can I steal a horse while I'm in prison? Wright told me it was his horse. I didn't know it was stolen. But it was still a crime to have a stolen horse." Wild Wright went to prison for 18 months, and Ned was sent to prison for 3 years. When he returned to 11 Creek in 1874, everything had changed. Chapter 2. Trouble at Home. May 1874. Ned's sister Annie was dead. His brother Jim was in prison for 5 years for stealing cows, and his brother Dan often caused trouble. There were also new people in the house, a new husband and a baby for Ned's mother. "Ned, is that you? Oh, Ned!" cried Ellen Kelly as she ran to the door. Ned, now 19 years old, tall and strong, was home from prison. He put his arm around his mother. "Hello, Ma," he said. "Oh, Ned, it's so good to see you," said Ellen. "I heard about Jim," Ned said quietly. "And about little Annie." "Poor Annie," his mother said sadly. "She became very sick after the baby came, and we couldn't help her. And poor Jim, 5 years in prison." "Yes, that's hard," said Ned. "And what about you, Ma? I heard you have a new husband." He looked at the sleeping baby in her arms. "He's a good man, Ned. This little one, Ellen, is his daughter." Ned touched the baby's small hand. "I'm happy for you, Ma, and I'm glad to be home." Ned soon found work again. He moved from one farm to another, cutting trees and helping with horses and cows. He often came back home to visit, and he and George King, his mother's new husband, became friends. George was from California and only 5 years older than Ned. One day, Ned spoke to George about the police. "Why do they always give me trouble?" he asked. "I don't know," said George. "Maybe they just don't like you." "It's true," said Ned. "When anyone loses a cow or a horse, the police come to me first. Then they go to Ma and ask her questions. Always at night when everyone's asleep. It's not fair." "Well," said George, "come and work with me. You're good with horses, and the police don't bother me." "What kind of work?" Ned asked. "Selling horses. Lots of them," said George. "And where will you get all these horses?" Ned asked with a smile. George only smiled back, and Ned laughed. It was exciting work. Later, Ned said, "We stole 280 horses, took them across the Murray River, and sold them in New South Wales for a lot of money. The police grew angrier and angrier. They wouldn't stop the stealing or catch Ned and George with the horses. In August 1877, a new policeman, Alex Fitzpatrick, came to Benalla. He liked horses, girls, and drink, and for a while he and Ned were friendly. Ned's sister Kate was a pretty girl with long black hair. Fitzpatrick liked her too, and at first Kate liked him. But soon there were angry words between Ned and Fitzpatrick, and a fight. No policeman could stay a friend of the Kellys for long. By April 1878, the police wanted to question Dan and Ned's friend Joe Byrne about stolen horses. Fitzpatrick rode out to the Kellys' house to find Dan. Maybe he also wanted to see Kate, but did Kate want to see him? On his way, he stopped for a few drinks. When he arrived, he felt bold and full of himself. "Dan Kelly, you're coming with me to the station," he said. "I'm having my dinner," Dan replied. "You can wait." Fitzpatrick sat down at the table. His eyes were on Kate the whole time, on her long hair and pretty face. The small room felt hot. When Kate walked past him, he put his arm around her. "You're a beautiful girl, Kate," he said. "Let's—" "Take your hands off me!" Kate shouted. Suddenly, Ned appeared at the door with a gun in his hand. He fired at Fitzpatrick and hit him in the wrist. "Get out!" shouted Ned. "Stay away from my sister!" Fitzpatrick ran out of the house and rode through the dark night back to Benalla. The next morning, 10 policemen came to the Kellys' house. They found Ellen at home, but not Ned or Dan. "Ellen Kelly," they said, "you and your sons tried to kill Policeman Fitzpatrick." "Nobody tried to kill him," Ellen cried. "You only want to make trouble for my family." She was holding her new baby, her 3rd child with George King. But George no longer lived with her. "Mrs. Kelly, where are your sons?" one policeman asked. Ellen looked straight at him. "I don't know," she said. "If you want them, go and find them yourself." That night, Ned and Dan left their mother's house and rode into the Wombat Hills. Far away at Bullock Creek, they built a small hut. They lived a wild life there and searched for gold in the river. Ned's friend Joe Byrne soon joined them, because he was also hiding from the police. 3 months later, another friend, Steve Hart, came out of prison. He rode to Bullock Creek, too. Now there were 4 of them together. In October, Ellen's brother came to the hut with terrible news. "Ned, your mother's going to prison for 3 years. The judge said she and you and Dan tried to kill Fitzpatrick. And the police are hunting you and Dan. Be careful. Stay in the hills." Ned's eyes burned with anger. He spoke slowly and coldly. "They can look," he said, "but they'll never catch me here." He turned to Dan, Joe, and Steve. "These policemen and judges, they're worse than dogs. They put my mother in prison when she did nothing wrong. From now on, we're the Kelly gang. We're free men, and we'll stay that way. Are you with me, boys?" And that was the beginning of the Kelly gang. Chapter 3. The Fight at Stringybark Creek. October 1878. 4 policemen, Kennedy, McIntyre, Lonergan, and Scanlon, rode north from Mansfield. They were going to Stringybark Creek in the Wombat Hills. Their plan was to stay there for a week, search for the Kelly gang, and bring them back to Mansfield, dead or alive. Early one morning, Ned and Dan left Bullock Creek. Joe and Steve stayed at their hut. "Walk quietly, Dan," said Ned, "and listen. I saw horse tracks near here yesterday. I think the police are close." The police camp at Stringybark Creek was only 2 kilometers away. The brothers soon found it. They hid behind some trees and watched. They saw the 4 policemen and their weapons, 2 large guns and 4 small ones. Later, back at the hut, Ned told Joe and Steve what he saw. "We've only got 2 guns," said Joe. "What can we do?" "They want to kill us," said Dan. "They'll shoot to kill, right, Ned?" "Yes," said Ned. "So, we can stay here and wait for them, or we can go and take their guns and horses. What do you say?" The answer was easy. The Kelly gang got ready, left Bullock Creek, and moved quietly through the forest. When they reached the police camp, only Lonergan and McIntyre were there. Lonergan sat on a log reading a newspaper, and McIntyre watched the fire. Suddenly, from behind a tree, Ned shouted, "Put your hands up!" McIntyre had no gun, so he stayed still and raised his hands. But Lonergan ran. He hid behind a fallen tree, pulled out his gun, and looked up. He never fired. Ned's bullet hit him in the head, and he died instantly. Ned ran to McIntyre. "Don't move," he said. "We don't want to kill you. We just want your guns and horses." Before they could leave, they heard a noise in the trees. "Ned!" called Steve. "The other 2 policemen are coming back." "Sit here," Ned said to McIntyre. "When you see your friends, call out to them. Tell them, don't shoot, put your guns down. We don't want to kill them, or you." A few seconds later, Kennedy and Scanlon rode into the camp. McIntyre stood up and said, "Get off your horses and put your hands up. There are men with guns here." "Oh, really?" said Kennedy with a laugh. "What men? What guns?" The Kelly gang stepped out from the trees. Ned shouted, "Put your hands up." Everything happened very fast. Ned fired and hit Scanlon. He fell from his horse. Kennedy jumped down and fired at Dan. Dan shot back, and Kennedy ran into the trees. McIntyre could not fight back because he had no gun. Then he saw Kennedy's horse standing nearby. He jumped on it and rode quickly into the forest. Kennedy also tried to escape. He moved quietly through the trees, but suddenly Ned appeared in front of him. Both men fired their guns. Kennedy fell to the ground, and soon he was dead. He was a brave man," said Ned sadly. "But it was him or me. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to kill any of them. The gang covered the 3 dead policemen with coats. Then they took the horses, guns, and food, and rode away." "They came to kill us, boys," said Ned. "But we killed them first. What else could we do? Now we must go, and we're not coming back." The Kelly gang rode north into the hills. The next day, tired and dirty, McIntyre reached Mansfield. Soon, everyone in the towns, villages, and farms of the northeast heard the news. 3 policemen were dead at Stringybark Creek. "The Kelly gang are killers," said the police. "They are outlaws now, and we must catch them. Dead or alive, anyone who gives us news about them will get a reward. £500 for each man, or £2,000 for all 4. It was a great deal of money. More policemen arrived in the northeast with extra guns and horses. Ned and his gang stayed in the area. They tried to escape north, but the Murray River was too high with water, so they could not cross. Their friends helped them, and they kept moving from place to place. One week, they rode more than 300 kilometers. 30 policemen searched the hills day and night for a month, but they never found the outlaws. By December, Ned and his gang moved to the Warby Hills. Life was wild and hard, and the 4 men were tired, hungry, and angry. Chapter 4. The Bank Raids. December 1878. The Kelly gang had many friends, but no money, so they decided to rob a bank in the small town of Euroa. They spoke politely to everyone and did not fire their guns. They left Euroa with £2,260, but they shared much of the money with their friends, poor farmers in the northeast, to help them buy food, clothes, and land. The police reward for catching the gang rose to £2,500. The police worked hard to find the outlaws, but the gang always had help. Whenever the police came looking, the Kellys were already far away. So the police began arresting their friends. Ned was angry when he heard this. "It's not fair," he said. "Why do they do this? Because our friends are poor farmers, not rich ones, and because they help us. We must stop the police." "But how?" asked Steve. "What can we do?" "2 things," said Ned. "First, we need more money, so we must visit another bank. Second, we must tell everyone in Australia what the police in Victoria are really like." "Rob another bank?" said Dan. "But the police are watching all the banks now." "Yes," said Ned. "In Victoria they are, but not in New South Wales. We'll go to Jerilderie. There are only 2 policemen there. We'll go at night, lock them in their station, then take the money from the bank. After that, we'll go to the newspaper office." "The newspaper office?" said Dan. "Why?" "To print this," said Joe. "Look, it's Ned's letter to the world. I wrote it for him. It tells the real story about Ned, his family, the police, and what happened at Stringybark Creek. We want everyone to read the letter," said Ned. "The only way is to print it in a newspaper." Ned made careful plans for the Jerilderie trip. By this time, more than 200 policemen were in northeast Victoria because of the Kelly gang. Ned asked a friend, Aaron Sherritt, to help them. Aaron went drinking with a policeman. After some money changed hands, he whispered, "Go to Corryong. The gang will cross the Murray River near there soon." The police rode east to Corryong, but the Kelly gang went west and crossed the river 200 kilometers away. Late on a Saturday night in February 1879, they rode quietly into Jerilderie. Outside the police station, Ned shouted, "Help! Help! There's a big fight at the hotel. We need help!" The 2 policemen ran out and saw the outlaws with guns. The gang quickly locked them inside a room in the station and took their uniforms. For the next 2 days, The gang stayed in the police station. On Sunday, Joe and Steve dressed in the uniforms and walked around town. "We're the new policemen of Jerilderie," they told everyone. They walked past the bank and the hotel beside it, carefully checking all the doors, front and back. On Monday morning, Dan and Steve walked into the hotel next to the bank and pulled out their guns. They ordered all the hotel workers into one room. "Don't move," said Dan. "You're our hostages, but don't be afraid. We don't want to hurt anyone." At the same time, Ned and Joe went into the bank through the back door. When they returned to the hotel, they brought 2 bank workers and several people from the bank with them, all as hostages. Ned was carrying the bank's money, £2,140. Now there were about 60 hostages in the room. Ned began to speak loudly to them. "What's happening in this country? Do you know? No, you don't! So listen. Poor men are getting poorer, and rich men are getting richer. The police help the rich farmers and put poor farmers in prison. Why? For nothing. Is this justice? There is no justice in Australia. The police call us killers, but I say the police are the real killers. I'll tell you the truth about Stringybark Creek, not the lies they tell." Then Ned took out his long letter and began to read from it. It was 56 pages long, with more than 75,000 words. After reading a few pages, he stopped and looked up. "Where's the newspaper office in this town?" he asked. "I want to print this letter so everyone can read it," one of the bank workers, Edwin Living, answered. "Mr. Gill is the editor of the newspaper," he said. "I know his house. I can take you there." "Come on then," said Ned. But when they reached the house, Mr. Gill wasn't there. He was at a farm 10 kilometers away. When he heard that the Kelly gang was in town, he ran off, afraid to return. Mrs. Gill opened the door nervously. "Where's your husband?" Ned asked. I don't know," she said. "He's gone away." Ned looked angry. He took out his letter. "I want him to print this in his newspaper," he said. "Give it to me," said Edwin Living. "I'll give it to Mr. Gill when he comes back." "He must print it," said Ned. "It's my life story, and the world needs to read it." "Yes," said Edwin. "Everyone should read it. Mr. Gill will print it, for sure, Mr. Kelly." "He must," said Ned. "All right, give it to him, but make sure he does, because if I ever come back to Jerilderie..." They returned to the hotel, and Ned had a drink with the hostages. Soon after, the 4 outlaws rode out of town, crossed the Murray River, and went back into Victoria and the hills of the northeast. The police searched everywhere. The reward was raised to £8,000, but no one came to claim it. Nobody wanted to help the police. In Jerilderie, people even laughed about the Kelly gang's visit. By April, some of Ned's friends were out of prison and back on their farms. For the next 16 months, the police heard nothing from the Kelly gang. And what about Ned's famous Jerilderie letter? Edwin Living never gave it to Mr. Gill. Instead, he took it to Melbourne and gave it to the police. No one saw the letter again for 50 years. Chapter 5. Glenrowan, Fight and Fire. June 1880. The Kelly gang lived in the hills. Their friends brought them food, but life was hard and the police still made trouble. The police no longer put the Kellys' friends in prison, but they would not let them buy land because they helped the gang. "We must do something," said Ned. "We must help our friends. We need a new country, a country for poor people, with fair police and fair judges. But it will not be easy. We must fight for it. We need money," said Joe. "A lot of money, and now there is a policeman with a gun at every bank. We need armor," said Ned. "Something to cover our heads and bodies. Bullets can't go through armor." "How will we get armor?" asked Dan. "We can make it," Ned said. With help from friends, they made 4 suits of armor from old farm machinery. Then they began to plan their fight. "Our friends want to help. They have guns and they want to fight with us," Ned said. "So we must bring many policemen to one place. How can we do that?" "With a killing," said Joe. "We kill Aaron Sherritt. He tells the police everything about us. He was a friend once, but now he works for the police." "That's true," Ned said. "Go to Aaron's house at Beechworth and shoot him. You and Dan." "Right," Dan said. "When the Beechworth police hear about it, they'll ask Benalla for help. And the Benalla police will take the train to Beechworth," said Steve. "Lots of police, all on one train. And we," said Ned quietly, "will be waiting for the train at Glenrowan." The plan began well. Joe and Dan rode to Beechworth. On Saturday, 26th June, when Aaron Sherritt opened his door, Joe shot him. Then they rode 60 kilometers across country to Glenrowan. The news went down to Benalla. Ned and Steve reached the Glenrowan Inn on Saturday afternoon. They began to take hostages, people from the railway station, the railway workers, and others from the town. Ned took some railway workers to the hill near the station. "Take up the railway line," he told them. "Go on." "We can't do that," one worker said. "Do you want to kill everyone on the next train?" Then he saw Ned's gun and said no more. The workers pulled up 3 meters of the railway line and went back to the inn with Ned. Joe and Dan were there now, and some friends stayed near the line, about 30 men in all. That night there was a lot of drinking in the inn. On Sunday morning, Ned found more hostages. The schoolteacher, Thomas Curnow, with his young wife, baby, and sister. There were now 62 hostages in the inn. Everyone waited for the police train. The police moved slowly. In Beechworth, Benalla, and Melbourne, they talked and made plans, again and again. At last, a police train left Melbourne late on Sunday evening. That same night, Ned told about 20 hostages. "You can go home." Later, the schoolteacher, Thomas Curnow, came to him. "Can I take my family home?" he asked. "Don't be afraid. You know I'm a friend of the Kellys." "Yes, you can go," said Ned. Thomas Curnow was a brave man. He took his wife, baby, and sister home. Later, he went quietly out into the night and walked along the railway line. At 3 o'clock in the morning, he heard the train and waved a red light. "Stop! Stop!" he shouted. At the inn, Ned and the gang heard the train too. They waited for the crash. But there was no sound of falling trees, no shouts, no cries. "What's happening?" Steve asked. "Nothing," said Ned. Someone stopped the train before it reached the broken rails. "Put on your armor, boys, and get ready to fight." The gang stepped outside the inn and started shooting at the police. The police fired back. Bullets flew everywhere. 3 hostages inside the inn were killed. The police shot Ned in the arm and foot, and Joe in the leg. "Go back inside," Ned told the gang. "I must find our friends and help them escape." Near the railway line, the gang's friends waited with their guns. "We want to fight, Ned," they said. "Take us with you." "No, you must go," said Ned. "The plan failed. There are police everywhere. This is our fight. You can't help us. Go!" Back in the inn, the shooting went on without stopping. The hostages, many of them women and children, lay on the floor, white-faced with fear. Joe was in the front room with a drink in his hand. "I drink to the Kelly gang," he shouted. A moment later, a bullet came through the wall and hit him. He died instantly. Ned's wounds were bad, and in the forest he fell to the ground. A friend tried to help him, but for hours he could not move. Slowly, he stood up again. Dressed in his heavy armor, he began to walk back toward the inn. In the pale morning light, Ned came out of the trees, holding his gun. 1 man against 34 policemen. They fired again and again, but their bullets hit the armor, and Ned laughed. "Go on, fire. You can't kill me," he shouted, but his legs were not covered by the armor. 1 policeman saw this and fired. Once, twice. The bullet struck Ned's legs, and he fell slowly to the ground. At once the police surrounded him. He was still alive, but badly hurt. They carried him to the railway station. Soon after, the last hostages were freed from Glenrowan Inn. Only Dan and Steve were still inside, but the police kept shooting. Later that Monday morning, another train arrived with more police, photographers, and newspaper men. There were now more than 1,000 people in Glenrowan. In Melbourne, hundreds of people waited for news of the Kelly gang. That afternoon, Ned's sisters, Maggie and Kate, reached Glenrowan. When they heard about Ned, they asked for news of Dan. "Maggie," said a policeman, "tell your brother and Steve Hart to put down their guns and come out." "Tell them to stop fighting, never!" said Maggie fiercely. Maggie and Kate never saw Dan alive again. The police were afraid to enter the inn, but didn't want Dan and Steve to escape at night. So they set fire to the building. The old inn burned quickly. When Maggie and Kate arrived, the sky was red with flames. "Dan! Oh, Dan!" Maggie cried again and again. "My poor brother," Kate wept. When the fire was out, only ashes remained. From the ruins, they carried out the bodies of Dan Kelly, Steve Hart, and Joe Byrne. Ned was alive, but in prison. It was the end of the Kelly gang. Chapter 6. Ned's Last Days. July 1880. The police took Ned Kelly first to Benalla, then to the big prison in Melbourne. There was a lot of waiting and talking. The police talked, the judges talked, and Ned talked. But the ending was always the same. At the end of October, Ned stood before his final judge, Sir Redmond Barry, in Melbourne. For 2 days, Judge Barry listened to the police, listened to Ned, and read the papers about the case. Then he made his decision. There were too many dead policemen in Ned's story, and the judge gave only one answer. Ned Kelly must die. He must be hanged in the prison, hanged by the neck until he was dead. It would be a lesson to every outlaw in Australia. Ned's mother, Ellen Kelly, was still in the same Melbourne prison. When she heard the news, she cried. For her son Dan, who was dead, and for her son Ned, who was still alive but waiting to die. They let her visit Ned on his last day. No one knew what mother and son said to each other that day. Ned's sisters and brother tried hard to help him. "How can they do this?" cried Maggie angrily. "How can they hang poor Ned? What about what the police did to him? Why don't the judges care about that?" "Shh, Maggie," said Jim quietly. "No time for that now. We must go out and talk to the people." So they did. They went all over Melbourne, to hotels and busy streets, speaking to everyone they met. "They're going to hang Ned Kelly," they said. "What do you think about that?" "It's not right," said one man. "Why are they doing it?" said another. "Because he killed a policeman?" "No, because he helped poor people and gave them money, that's why." "But what can we do?" asked a third man. "Sign our petition," they said. More than 32,000 people signed the Kelly petition. But it changed nothing. On November 10th, Ned's last visitors came to see him. He ate his final meal, then sang for half an hour and went to bed. The next morning, they led him across the prison to a room with a rope. Outside, over 5,000 people waited. Men and women, rich and poor. "Where's the Kelly family?" one woman asked. "Some are at the hotel," someone answered. But Maggie went back to Beechworth to be with her children. And Ned's poor mother, she's still here in prison, waiting for 10 o'clock. Inside the prison, other prisoners began to shout and bang on their doors. Ellen Kelly sat alone in her cell, crying quietly for her oldest son. At the hotel, Jim Kelly sat with his head in his hands. Poor Ned, he said sadly. This is the end of all his troubles. At 10 o'clock, the prison officers put a rope around Ned Kelly's neck and hanged him. Ned was dead. But in the Northeast, life went on. 68 people received money from the reward for the Kelly gang. The schoolteacher, Thomas Curnow, was given £1,000. A new policeman, Graham, came to the town of Greta. He was kind and fair, and many of Ned's friends respected him. "Don't make trouble," he told them, "and then you can buy your farms." He even visited Ellen Kelly at 11 Mile Creek and had tea with her. Everyone in the district talked about that. Slowly, things began to change. The police tried to be more helpful, not only to rich people but also to the poor. Most of the young men stopped stealing and fighting with the law. Before long, the Northeast became quiet again. The rest of the Kelly children stayed out of trouble. Jim Kelly was a good son to his mother for the rest of her life. Ellen Kelly lived to be 93 years old and had many grandchildren, but she never forgot her oldest son, Ned. Who was the real Ned Kelly? Did he fight for the poor or only for himself? Some people say he was a brave man. Others say he was a fool. Some call him a killer, just a wild man with a gun. But one thing is certain. More than 100 years later, people are still talking about him. There are books, songs, films, and websites about his life. Everyone still remembers Australia's most famous outlaw, Ned Kelly. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more classic tales rewritten in easy English. Leave a comment below. Do you think Ned Kelly was a hero or an outlaw?